Ever press the button on your CD player and nothing happens? Maybe the drawer won't open, or your CD sound terrible, or maybe all your discs are now skipping. Before you go throw that player in the trash and go shopping for a new one, there's a good chance you can repair each of these issues at home. And the good news is you don't even need a workbench full of fancy tools to do so. Hi there, if you're new here, my name is Aaron, and on my channel I talk a lot about CD players, both new and vintage. And for years I have always assumed that it was impossible to repair a CD player without any professional skills. But recently, after a lot of research, I noticed 4 common issues with CD players that can often be repaired at home. Now, to put this to the test, I bought 7 broken CD players off eBay, and I was able to get each up and running, sometimes using nothing more than a Q-tip, which is impressive because I have 0 professional skills. In this video, I want to explain to you those 4 common issues and what you can do to repair each so that we can hopefully get you back to listening to your CD collection again. Now, before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge I've made over 200 videos on YouTube, and I love nothing more than getting right to the point, but we've got to set some ground rules here and some expectations. Number 1, I am not a professional. I don't claim to be a professional. I am a tinkerer. I've watched hours of YouTube videos, people repairing CD players from great channels like Spare Time Repair, Turntable Guy, 12 Volt Vids. And after watching a lot of those videos, I realized there's just a lot of common issues that are on the mechanical side of things that I felt comfortable attempting to repair. And so on this video, we're going to focus on the mechanical side of things, oftentimes with just the transport and the CD drawer. Things that you most likely can fix at home. We're not going to be looking at the electrical side of a CD player with a power supply, capacitors, resistors, DAC chips. That all requires special tools and special knowledge on how to diagnose and repair those issues. So we're not tackling those, okay? I don't know how to do that. But when I watched these other videos and saw the mechanical issues, I thought, I bet there's a good chance I could do that. That's why I bought 7 CD players to try it out. And well, that's part of the reason why I bought 7 CD players. The other part of the reason is because I have a buying addiction when it comes to gear, but that's a whole other video topic for another time. So that means today we're talking very broad. I'm not going to get into your specific CD player, your Sony Yamaha Denon CDP 375 2E Mark III with the woodside panels. We're not getting that granular. I want to show you broad issues over a multitude of players. Once you see what the broad issues are, then you can take that knowledge and find the specific information for your CD player, perhaps a YouTube video or a blog post or the service manual itself, and then use these broad ideas to narrow it down to fix your player specifically. If you don't feel confident with these things, just take it to a professional to have it repaired. I have broken electronics in the past. I am not here to pretend like I am a repair person. I have broken things and made it worse, and then had to take it somewhere and pay more money to repair my dumb attempt at fixing it. So just keep that in mind when you're taking the top off your own CD player. Do so at your own risk. Easily the most common issues with CD players are the drawers no longer open. And for all of us who have been using CD players for many years, we're familiar with the concept of just the belts on the drawer mechanisms going bad, right? But there's a lot of people just getting into the hobby, and they might find an old CD player in a thrift store and the drawer doesn't open and they think that they're screwed, but really they're not. They just need to replace some belts. But what I wanted to show you was just how belt replacement is not the same amongst all these different players. I've got a variety here. These are all from the 1980s, but there's various brands. This is a Denon, a Sony, a Technics, and I even have a Magnavox right here. And I thought it would be interesting just to see that there's not always just one belt. Sometimes there's more than one belt. And sometimes it's super easy to change a belt. Sometimes it's complicated. For instance, on this Denon player right here, you can see that the belt that opens and closes the drawer is just right here, and it's easily accessible from the top. You can swap that out no problem. You don't even have to remove this whole transport, which is really, really convenient. However, on this Technics player right here, the belt is located underneath this transport. So I had to remove all of these screws, take out this whole transport, and flip the transport over, and there was a belt underneath it. What was interesting on this Magnavox player here is that the belt, and it's kind of hard to see, but the belt is actually tucked down over here on the side. And I was actually able to replace that belt without removing the transport. Although, hindsight being 2020, it would have been easier to remove the transport and replace it, but there you go, that belt is over there. But here's the thing, not all of these players can only just use one belt. For instance, on this Sony player, this one was unique because actually of all CD players, this is the only one where I've been able to access the belt from the bottom. Now you can see here, there is the belt. However, if you look even more closely, there's actually two belts. So you can see the second belt kind of tucked away back there. And all you have to do is remove this guy right here, and you can kind of easily access both those belts, and they were fairly easy to change. So just because your drawer is not opening, it doesn't always mean it's only just one belt. Check out the service manual. See if you can find a video on YouTube where someone else may have repaired one of these to be able to show you just A, how many belts there are, and B, where they're located. One more quick note on belts. You can buy these belt packs cheap on Amazon, like $5 or $6, and they come in a variety of sizes. Now, anyone that repairs these professionally will say you really need to make sure you have the correct OEM size belt for every single one of these players to make sure it works properly. I actually don't disagree with that, but just for fun, I tried using belts out of all these packets with these units, and they all work properly. What you mostly want to make sure is that the belts aren't too tight and too loose. So just take out the old belt, compare it with some of these, and you should be off and running. If you feel more comfortable looking up the exact OEM replacement belt online, you can usually do so, find that, and order those specific for your player. So after you replace the belt, if you start to notice that the drawer just feels like there's a lot of friction when you're opening it and closing it, what I learned is that that is not a belt issue, but oftentimes these old players need further lubrication on the drawer, especially on certain plastic parts. So let me try to show you what I mean. So on this CD player back here on the Sony, you'll note here that when I open and close it, that this is going to travel right along this area. Okay, so let's close it. And then let's open it again. Now this player was still having trouble after I replaced the belts, and I don't know, it didn't seem smooth at all. If you look closely back here, and it's kind of hard to see, but right here on this trail here, not on the metal, but on the plastic, there was this old black grease that was there. So what I did is I took a Q-tip and I cleaned all that black grease off, and I put some super lube on there. And again, this is like a clear lube, so you can't really see it. But now that it's back there, when that is moving along there, it just opens up so nice and smooth. And this actually also happened over here on this Magnavox. Now this one is a little bit more interesting, and what I would suggest is when you get the top off, look at the way your transport opens and closes and just see where the plastic is touching and moving. Because here on this Magnavox, it's really more about these areas here. You'll see when I open and close it, there's a lot more action on that part of the transport. And especially right here on this sloped section. So what I did was I went and I cleaned all that old grease off of there and put some super lube on there, and that is opening and closing so much smoother. Now looking at this Denon player, I haven't actually done this process yet on this player. And what I would do is I would just look over here and notice you can see there's just some old grease and gunk all right here that's all kind of jammed up. I would definitely clean all that out, and then again I would just look and see where that drawer is opening and closing and where that contact is making on the plastic. And I would take, again, super lube. I'll leave a link in the comments I'll leave a link in the description on where you can buy this. I would just come back with that super lube and probably just apply it in these areas where I feel like the tray is dragging a little bit, and it's just going to make that open and close a lot more smooth than maybe just replacing the belt would have done. All right, at this point, we've replaced the belt, we've re-lubricated the drawer, and now we try to play a CD and it sounds terrible. What do we do next? Well, the thing that I would do first is I would clean the laser on each of these players. Now, there's two ways you can do this. One, you can take a Q-tip like this, and you can locate the laser. It's often going to be underneath the clamp here, and you can get that Q-tip down there and clean it off. So that would be there. On this Magnavox, you can kind of see you can get down in there and clean it like so. However, what I ended up using on all of these players is this CD lens cleaner, that I got on Amazon. I paid $8 for this. The prices on these seem to vary, because there seems like sometimes they're trying to sell you two instead of one, but I'll include a link in the video description for where you can buy this on Amazon. And basically all this is it's a CD, and you place the CD into the unit and it will play it just like it would a regular CD. And there's actually audible instructions, like it'll say play track 1, and then when you're done with track 1, it'll say skip to track 3 and it'll clean. This has these brushes here, and you can see I've actually used this so much. These brushes are kind of getting gross. Like it's probably not going to want to focus, but these are actually looking pretty gnarly, and I'll probably order a new disc soon. But this takes just a couple minutes, and I use this on every single one of these players that I have here and a couple behind me. And every time this really brought the audio back. For instance, this Magnavox player, when I bought it and opened it up, this was caked in dust. It was so gross. I've since got it cleaned out. It took forever. But before I cleaned all that out, I thought it'd be worth just after I replaced the belt to see what it sounded like, and it sounded terrible. And it made sense because this was so dusty, that lens was filthy. I used that little disc cleaner and it sounded great from there. Same thing with this Sony actually. The seller told me, oh, hey, it sounds great. Or excuse me, he said, oh, it works great, right? And you know what it's like buying things off eBay. It's always a gamble. So even though this one was working properly, I just felt in my gut there would probably be something that needed to be done. This player is a CDP 520ES from Sony, and it's similar. It's just one model up from the 320 that I have down there in the corner, which I had already fixed and loved. And so I really wanted to get one more model up, and I got this one. And again, the sound on this one was very harsh, and it just sounded terrible, honestly. And I thought that's strange because the 320 that I fixed sounded great. I popped that disc in, cleaned the lens, thought I would try that first, and it ended up sounding great. So if you've got an old player and it just sounds like it shouldn't, like if your CDs just sound really harsh or digital, or like there's just not all there, try cleaning that laser. Again, you can use a Q-tip or this disc, but it will really go a long way. All right, this last tip by far is the most important, because I think this will help keep your vintage CD player out of the landfill. I worry a lot of people just threw their CD players away not knowing about this service that they could do. So we've replaced the belt and fixed the drawer. We've applied new lubrication so that the drawer opens and closes as smooth as possible. We've cleaned the laser to get the best sound as possible. And now we find that our CDs are skipping. Now there's two things that you can do for skipping CDs. One, reference back to the cleaning the lens. Sometimes just cleaning the lens will help resolve any CD skipping issues. And this is for CDs that are skipping that are clean, nice and clean CDs that are skipping, not beat up CDs that should be skipping. So now you're frustrated because your vintage CD player, you've done all this work, but it's still skipping. This is what I learned that I find very important. The laser mechanism here on these CD players, right here, you can see here, there's your laser mechanism. These run up and down on metal rails, and it's going to be easiest to show you this on this Technics player. You see these metal rails here? Now, these have grease that were applied to them, I don't know, 40 years ago. This player's from the 1980s, and I actually have not cleaned up this grease yet. You can kind of see here where it's kind of gunked up and gross, and it's old grease right there. You can kind of see it's like a tan color almost. What happens is this laser pickup is going to read the CD from the inside layer all the way out. So it starts here and it moves backwards while it's playing your CD. If this is all gummed up, this mechanism is going to get jammed. And as it's moving, it's going to cause skipping. And I think a lot of people have gotten rid of their CD players thinking that this entire pickup mechanism is dying or dead because it's skipping, but in reality, it works fine. It just can't move freely. So in this instance, I would take a Q-tip, get some alcohol on it, clean these rails, and then I would reapply some white lithium grease on these. Now, I use the Super Lube for the plastic because I've heard that white lithium grease isn't great for plastic, but this is what we want to use on these rails. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to apply a lot. You just want to get that old grease off and new grease on. There's a couple ways you can go about doing this. A lot of times there are screws here that will allow you to completely remove these rails and get them cleaned off and re-lubed. That is always highly suggested. If you don't feel comfortable, you can probably just get away with applying your own here. But as you'll see here, these pieces here where the rails are actually sliding on, those can often get gunked up too. So sometimes you really want to take these metal rails out and get inside that and clean it as well. Reapply lubrication, and that mechanism is going to start moving a lot more smooth and no longer cause your CDs to skip. I have to admit, I have really fallen in love tinkering with these old CD players. I narrowed my search down to the 1980s made in Japan because I knew they were more mechanical and easier to service, and I would just like something on eBay. I would read the description and see like, oh, it's a sticky drawer, I could probably fix that, and the seller would make me some lowball offer and I would end up buying it. And I think that's why I have 7. I have more like 10 of these now. Like, people just keep sending me these low offers and I'll take them, you know, and get them up and running. And it just feels great to get these things working again. Like, instead of doom scrolling, I'll just go fix a 40-year-old CD player. That's a good feeling, right? There's another great reason why I have all these CD players now, because these have me really rethinking a video I made at the beginning of the year comparing new CD players with vintage CD players. So I'm going to really dive deep in some of these CD players in future videos and rethink some of those preconceived ideas I had when I made that one earlier this year, and even highlight some of the quirky, interesting features that these older CD players have that aren't common in today's players, because that's what surprised me a lot. So stay tuned for more about these CD players coming up. It's really more about a gear addiction for me. When I get to buy this stuff and make videos about it, it's just a blast. Now, there's a good chance that you may stumble on one of these sort of like single drawer players from the 80s at your thrift store, and hopefully after watching this video, you feel confident you can maybe get it back up and running again. That happened to me last year with a Carver CD player that was an audiophile CD player. I bought it for 20 bucks at a thrift store, and I didn't know if I could get it up and running, but when I got it home, it had a lot of these same issues. If you'd be interested in watching that video and see if I was able to get that one up and running as well, you could do so by clicking this video here.